people here today. And the reason... Oh, sorry, yes, children. Is there any children here? You can go to Sunday school. Anyway, the reason that the young people have turned up is that we have a guest speaker this morning, and he is Blue Bradley from Morningside. So I don't know how many of you have been to Crave Cafe. Okay, well, I encourage you to turn up there at some stage. It's in Morningside. It's an amazing cafe. So Blue is part of that. He's also leads our Easter camp. So that's why our young people have turned up, because they know this man is a great speaker and they trust him. And we trust you too, Blue, and we thank you for your availability to come and speak God's word to us this morning. Thank you.
Does this go? It's all good? Thanks. So, man, way to get somebody crying before they even get up on stage. Man, that's a shocker. Thank you. I've heard so much about this community of faith over the years, and it's legendary. And it's the first time I've ever been here, so I'm just stoked to be here this morning. Easter camp. I'm here to talk about a couple of things. One is about camp, and one's about change. And and I'm going to try and morph these two things together. I have the best job in the world. I don't care what you do. You think your job's good. My job is amazing. But it never started off like that. I remember when I was asked to do the Easter Camp Director's job, I said, heck no. It was a bit stronger than that. But heck no. I'm not going to do that job. That's a mug's game. That's a mess. There's the pressure. Everybody hates you and all that sort of stuff. And I remember that summer, my friend was saying, man, you're grumpy. We're playing golf. And he goes, you've been just grumpy for about a month. What's going on? And I said, I think God wants me to put my name forward for Easter Camp. And he said, good days. I said, bad days. And I remember just being in a fetal position, crying with my wife, just like she was saying, oh, give it back, for a while. But there's something that happened in that whole process that God was part of. I remember my friend, my oldest friend, she's known me since I was a real mongrel young 14-year-old. She was a new leader. We're sitting in the bleachers of Easter Camp. I got the handover that morning, and she nudges me. I'm looking out, and there's thousands of young people. And she nudges me and goes, you scared? You scared? Because I was going to speak the next year on the stage. You know, no one prepares you to speak on a stage in front of thousands of people. You get your 30s at youth group, you get your 100s at the camp and that, and then there's 4,000 people or whatever, and there's 3,000 people back then. And she nudged me, said, you scared? And I just burst into tears. And she goes, oh, I didn't know you were that scared. And I said, I just like this thing came out of me, I can't wait. It was like that I have a dream speech. It was I can't wait speech. I can't wait to get on that stage. I can't wait to tell this young generation, I'm going already, a shocker. I can't wait to tell this generation about what God's doing. I can't wait to unleash in this generation, because they're our future. I can't wait to just talk about what God's going to unleash in these young people's hearts. And it was like the next year I couldn't wait to get out on stage. I don't need to get out on stage. In fact, when I took the job, it was not a stage presence job, but it turned into one because there was a future of a generation that is going to take up the baton, that is going to carry what God is doing today, but not what God was doing yesterday, that I couldn't wait to be part of, unleashing that. So for those of you who don't know what camp is, we're just going to show our promo DVD for this year. The theme is wonder. You know, we want to get back to the wonder of God, the awe, the mystery, I can't put God into a box. When I think I've got him all sorted, her all sorted, whatevs, then I'm just in a bit of trouble here, you know. And when you lose your sense of wonder, actually something happens within our soul that dies. And so we need to get back to the mystery. So this is the wonder of camp. I'll just show you this video.
Have you ever wondered? Opened your eyes to the awakening sun? Felt the defiant power of the ocean clutching at your senses? The sights, smells, colors, and movement of this world. It's mind-blowing. Like a child loose in a candy store. Like experiencing the sound of a live show. Like seeing color for the first time. Like standing at the base of a lofty maunga, comparing how small you are in its shadow. Have you ever just waited, listened, waited? Is he listening? Are you listening? The deafening sound of silence that obscures the everyday chaotic speed of life stop. You will hear more. You will feel more. You will see more. Get caught in his wonder.
Going on this year in terms of theme, and we're going to hang the Easter story through that lens, you know, sort of approach it through that lens. The Easter story is still an Easter story, it remains unchanged, but we address it through different ways. So one of the things, why do kids come? Why do teenagers come to camp? You know, isn't there better things to do? Like there's better movies out, there's better concerts to go to, and there's a whole lot of bells and whistles in it. And one of the values that we have at Easter camp, which is why I think it's so successful with young people, is that we exist to serve and empower you. You know? Easter camp doesn't actually exist. You know, I got a cell phone and a laptop. I get paid a few days a week, and we run on the equivalent of one person's salary spread out. We have about 400 volunteers that come and put camp together and serve it. And some of them never get to see any of the cool stuff because they're serving, so that young people can experience the community that they come with, right? So we serve communities, about 135 youth communities. We serve leaders that can actually pour out to the young people. We work really hard to create an environment that is conducive to leaders connecting with young people and being where young people are at. And so we put on lots and lots and lots of things that would be good for that. So we've got 2 main meetings. It's not a festival. There are rules. You have to attend some meetings, a couple of meetings a day. There is a bedtime, you know. It is 12 o'clock. Our leaders wish it was 10. It's 12 o'clock at night. By the 5th day, the leaders' eyeballs are hanging down and stuff like that. And, you know, teenagers need sleep. Otherwise, 3rd day into it, they're scratching each other's eyes and stuff like that. And it's not good. And so at camp, we've got a whole bunch of things that you can do. If the kids are crazy about sports, there's 150 so sports teams that go on with the big main meetings. There's lots of fun activities, and then there's lots of seminars. We have about, by the time we double it up, about 14 seminars a day that talk to either things in the Bible that you want to learn, or things that young people are going through in their lives that they can be quite useful. How to get a handle on self-harming, depression, sexuality. How to get a handle on family. All those sorts of things that young people are wrestling with. We want to provide a really good, safe context and environment for young people to explore those things. Yeah? And this is where you kind of come in. Okay? No youth group can do it alone. It takes a community outside of that youth group to actually empower leaders, resource leaders, pray for leaders as their young people are experiencing something. Otherwise, we ship them off to camp, and what happens over there is fine. But how does what happened at camp, how does what God does in the lives of our young people at camp start to be infused into the life of the community here? Well, it starts with prayer, starts with support. Sometimes that means money, sometimes that means driving, sometimes that means lending some stuff, sometimes that means actually having a program that we're doing at camp and actually praying through that program during the week. Some of my most successful camps before Easter camp was when I had a team of what I call the old guard, the prayer warriors, and they had our program and they prayed every day, and man, we saw some amazing things happen when we were partnered together in camp. So change. You can't be in youth work and not change, right? And so change is part of camp continuously. Camp has been going over 100 years, right? Way over 100 years in many, many different forms. And there was a really elderly man who retired, and I asked him to write a letter to my crew. What was Easter camp like back in the day? And he talked about back in the day we used to get up and used to chip the ice, break it so that we can wash our dishes and scrub our teeth and wash our faces in the big basins and that. And it was in a tent and everybody was cold as, and we caught a train or we bussed down to this particular place. And these stories were amazing. They sounded really cold. Really, really grubby. And so I invited him back to an Easter camp one year where literally we had people swinging from the ceilings in the auditorium. They were like meters up. Spackman came and said, we want to hang this thing. He goes, oh yeah, that should be right. And we just literally had kids swinging through the ceiling and a full-on worship band and thousands of teenagers, and he's just looking there and going, my Easter camp has changed since my day. You know? In my day, it was like that. Have you ever heard that sort of rhetoric, of in my day, in my day? And so what happened in my day is the thing that God did in my day. And when God did that thing in my day, I've got this little thing that was just awesome about my day. And then I try and sort of push my day into this day. And sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect. Yeah? And so 100 years in youth culture means that you have to actually have a foundation of change in order to meet change, because youth are not going to stay my day. Youth are about today, and youth are the most culture-changing beasts on the planet. You know, when back in my day, there was about 5 youth cultures, right? There was heavy metals, there was these weird punk rockers, there was Duran Duran followers, sort of their tie-dyed hair and stuff like that. Sometimes you morphed in between the two. There was break dancing, Bob Marley, stuff like that. Malcolm McLaren. There was about 5 youth cultures that of music that you kind of listened to that kids would dress up like. And that today, it's everywhere. It's just everywhere. You get a youth culture back then, a youth group, 30, 40 kids, you get a cross of about 2 of those. Now, it's anything goes. So in order to meet this change and still be rooted in the past, you actually have to come up with some principles. So for me, this is my 10th year at camp. And so I came up with a term 2 years ago. I am the past. Right? I need to go at some stage. I don't know when that will happen, whether it will be in a year, in 5 years. Man, if it's 5 years, man, kick me out, would you, already? Because if I'm about developing the next generation, then I need to make some space for the next generation, yeah? And so I've with my crew, some of the older guys have been part of camp 25 years, I help them see that we are the past. And that is not a bad thing. That is an amazing thing. It's a privilege to be part of the past. We still have the power, so to speak. We still hold the keys, so to speak. We're still part of the decision-making now. But if I think that I am the now, then I will fool myself. And I won't see what the future looks like. When I'm in the power now, when I've got the keys now, if I have the mindset that I'm the past, I'm just sitting here looking for the future. I'm sitting here trying to recognize what God is doing about the tomorrow, rather than always trying to make it about what we've done in the past. So I'm taking my friends on a journey with that, because if you don't recognize, I've said to my friends, if you don't recognize that we're the past now while we still hold the keys, you will hold on to the future too tightly. And somebody will rip it out of your hands, and it will be painful and it will be messy. How about you and I take a journey to discover what the future is going to be, to recognize it, to look for it, to champion it, to cheer it on. And the only way we can do that is if we recognize that we're the past, still holding. Now, the past has a very good voice, So I have to think, am I going to empower for the future with camp, with church, with possibilities? Or am I going to be the gatekeeper? Because if I'm the gatekeeper of the things that God did in the past, I'm going to hold it in a particular way. And it's all right for me to do that sometimes, because God was so alive and at work in the past that I can't imagine that he might do something like that again in the future differently. It's natural. So I have to not think of myself as the gatekeeper if the life of camp is going to become more than what I know it to be. I was talking to before, you're old school, young Mr. Spackman at the back. He was before Mystery Creek. We've been at Mystery Creek about 14 years, and so he can see the changes in his long lifetime as a youth, sort of going to camp. That's a long time. How many?
That would have been about 18, 19 years
18, 19 years, you're the same. That's a long time in youth culture. That's like many, many, many changes in youth culture. So one of the things why sometimes we don't like the future, it's human condition. We don't like change. We don't like the future. What we like is the past, because the past is where things used to happen. The past is where we knew things to be, and we can rewrite history to the past. We can actually, have you ever had two people experience the same thing and you'll get two totally different, oh, it was like that, oh, it was wonderful, oh, it was horrible. You know, and all that sort of stuff. It's the same past, but they rewrite it, you know. And what happens to us in the past actually starts a narrative of what we believe and live out today. Yeah? And that can be great. That can be awesome. The past was amazing and it set me up for who I am today and what I feel. But sometimes the past wasn't good. Sometimes the past was really bad. Sometimes the past was horrific. And in the horrific state, whether we're 8 years old or we're 18 years old, sometimes we write a narrative of our lives based on our experiences that actually we still tell ourselves today. Yeah? I was abused when I was here, therefore I'm still no good now. The sadness about that is that I won't feel any good when I'm older over here, because the narrative I believed as an 8-year-old still exists. And I know people in their 60s and 70s who want to rock in a cradle position because of the abuse that's happened in their lives when they were young. They cannot escape the narrative that they feel caught in, rather than meeting Christ in that narrative and having Him affect our story. Belonging to His story changes our story of the narrative that can step into the known now, which actually helps us embrace what the future could be, rather than based on our past. The past informs us. It doesn't need to hold us to ransom. But if the past was awesome and it was really good, then we want to go there all the time. We want to go where it was good. We want to go when it was. And throughout New Zealand, there are churches, there are expressions that back in the day was when God was doing some stuff. And the younger generation can go, yeah, but it's not my stuff. And I don't even understand what you're on about. That sounds really lame, by the way. But when you were young and you were that age, it was going off. So if we look into church history in New Zealand, let's just take the 50s, the heyday, they call it in church culture. Listen up, young people. This is the heyday. This is what you need to understand about the heyday. When old people go on about the heyday, there was something going off the hook that you don't understand. A guy called Billy Graham came to New Zealand in the 1950s. Who was around? Yeah? He came and did what was called a crusade. Now, if a young culture heard about we're going to go on a crusade, you'd go, what? A what? That's offensive. I'm not going to go on a crusade. But back then it kind of meant something different. Now, here's the deal. Billy Graham, he attracted over 1/4 of New Zealand's population to come to his meetings. Take note. 1/4 of New Zealand showed up to his meetings. A resurrected Michael Jackson couldn't even pull it off today's standards. There is no one that I can think of in the planet, whether it's an entertainer or a politician, that could pull 1/4 of New Zealand together today. Right? Something big was happening. Can you imagine what the buzz was in some of these guys' lives back then in society and culture? Billy Graham's coming. He's amazing. You should hear him. And it's going to be all this sort of stuff. There was a buzz. There is nothing that you have encountered in society that was as big as Billy Graham in 1950. Yeah? Just take note. Something awesome was happening back in the day. Now, here's some other things about Billy Graham. 1% of New Zealand statistics said we were not Christians. So it was a very dominant Christian culture, New Zealand society. It had systems and structures in it. 40% of the school roll attended Sunday school. So basically, you could get onto any street corner. My mate's grandfather used to do what was called the gospel train. He used to catch the train down the country, hop off at any small town, get a soapbox, stand up there, and start preaching the gospel. And he could preach the gospel because New Zealand society as a whole could engage with what he was talking about. Things have changed now. That is not the case. If I got up and started to talk about the merits of Christianity, I need to do that very, very differently. So roll on to where we are now. We are not a Christian nation. Less than 1% of of our school roll attends any sort of form of Sunday school. The latest crusade that came through was Leighton Ford. Who's the last guy? About 5 years ago, came through. About 10,000 people went to the things. This guy, rather than Billy Graham, there was thousands of people came through to what was called the persuasion of the gospel, reduced to 4 spiritual laws. Somebody here will tell you about it later. This new guy, there was 157 commitments to faith through the internet. Right. So no longer were people part of a church, a community of faith. They could make a response to follow Jesus at home in the comfort of their own homes behind a screen. That's how far things have moved and changed from the 50s, the heyday, to today. So what is the heyday anyway? Do we go back to what was? Do we try and... We just need to pray more. We just need to preach more. We just need to... Whatever more it was in the day that God was doing something then is not necessarily what God is doing today when we need to engage with change. Does it make sense? I was preaching once at Milford Baptist. I got down, they had a Madonna mic and all that sort of stuff. I was pastoring there for a while. There was a family congregation and there was an elderly congregation. And I was part of the elderly congregation service. I got down from the stage and an elderly gentleman got up and he started playing a couple of tunes on the pipes, you know. And everybody started murmuring. And you don't speak in an elderly service. And murmuring and shuffling. And they started walking across and holding each other's hands across the aisles. Now, I knew that you don't really talk to this person and you wouldn't give that person the time of day. But they were holding hands. And then they started swaying. And they started singing this old hymn. I had no idea what this old hymn was. I had never heard it before. And as they're singing, they were just everything, giving everything, swaying away, I felt completely and utterly left out of what they were doing. I had no idea. I didn't need to. Something that they remembered that God was doing in their day. Something that community, at that era, that God was doing in their day was unfolding. And they were in tears remembering what God had done, how God had been faithful at that time. I didn't think that I was missing out and I needed to get in on the action because that was something God had done that was special to that generation that I would never be part of. You will never be part of in that same way. But I was reminded by something. Man, I have been here 2 minutes. You know, I've been here 2 minutes of the day compared to these people. These elderly folk had been faithful, present, still attending, still zealous for their faith, still solid in their relationship with God for decades. I had been here 2 minutes. What did I think I knew that I could teach them? I turned into a student that day. Oh, I wonder what it is you could teach me. I wonder what it is that I need to hear about what God was doing in your day that will inform me for what God's doing in me this day. Does that make sense? I was reminded that I stand on the shoulders of those who have been before me, which comes with much respect, which comes with much kudos. It's not irrelevant. It's not to be discarded. It's to be listened to. It's to be inspired by. It's to learn from. What God was doing then informs what we're doing today. If I forget that, I'm just 2 seconds in the sun thinking I know everything. I don't. You don't. We don't. So I think we need to do something when we do change. So we do this thing together. Yeah? What could it be like that doesn't change? Because God does not change. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. But there are things that He is doing that change. Absolutely. So we need to do it together a little bit. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to, back in the day when I was a young fella and we learnt to play guitar, everybody busted out a riff. Do you know the riff to Stairway to Heaven? Oh, come on. You do so. When I was an intermediate, everybody knew Stairway to Heaven. Stairway to Heaven back then was evil, by the way. It's not so evil now. And so I'm going to do something I've never done. I'm going to play a clip of Stairway to Heaven. Now, Stairway to Heaven was this old... I'll just talk to these guys for a little minute. Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant, he had a voice that screamed. He had tight leather pants on, and he could hit some notes, you know, that was just wailing and screaming, and it was back in the 70s, and it was just like full-on hippie culture and stuff like that, metal. And their most famous song is called Stairway to Heaven. Do you know it? Yeah? So Stairway to Heaven, it's legendary, it's old school. Now, many people have tried to do a rendition of Stairway to Heaven, and it's horrible. It's been horrible. So they're at this place, and they've been welcomed in, and it's really flash place. And 2 women come out to sing Stairway to Heaven. 2 women. Can women sing Stairway to Heaven? It's never been done before. Can women sing Stairway to Heaven? What kind of job are these people going to do? So when you've got the masters, they created it. They were part of its culture at the beginning, sitting in the audience, and they have to listen. Is this going to be another horrific example of Stairway to Heaven? Done by 2 women? How's that going to work? Now, the women were sisters, and they were in a band called Heart. They formed a little band called Heart, just 2 of them. And back in the late 80s. And so they were about pop. They weren't hardcore rock like Led Zeppelin. So when the song starts out, they're pretty laughing. You know, these ladies come out on stage and they start working. And Led Zeppelin, when we show the clip, I want you to watch Led Zeppelin as they're looking and they're laughing. You know, they're into this. Yeah, let's see what happens. What are they going to do with our song is what they're thinking. What are they going to do with our song? Because we bled over this. We ate this. We toured with this. This is kind of what God was doing stuff over here. This was back in the day stuff. And so what are they going to do with the thing that we loved? Are they going to be kind to it? Are they going to take it somewhere different? Are they going to mangle it up? Is it going to be horrible? And so as the song progresses, I want you to look at what Led Zeppelin do, their faces, and how everything changes. So let's come out to sing Stairway to Heaven. 2 women. Can women sing Stairway to Heaven? It's never been done before. Can women sing Stairway to Heaven? What kind of job are these people going to do? So when you've got the masters, they created it. They were part of its culture at the beginning, sitting in the audience, and they have to listen. Is this going to be another horrific example of Stairway to Heaven? Done by 2 women? How's that going to work? Now, the women were sisters, and they were in a band called Heart. They formed a little band called Heart, just 2 of them. And back in the late 80s. And so they were about pop. They weren't hardcore rock like Led Zeppelin. So when the song starts out, they're pretty laughing. You know, these ladies come out on stage and they start working. And Led Zeppelin, when we show the clip, I want you to watch Led Zeppelin as they're looking and they're laughing. You know, they're into this. Yeah, let's see what happens. What are they going to do with our song is what they're thinking. What are they going to do with our song? Because we bled over this. We ate this. We toured with this. This is kind of what God was doing stuff over here. This was back in the day stuff. And so what are they going to do with the thing that we loved? Are they going to be kind to it? Are they going to take it somewhere different? Are they going to mangle it up? Is it going to be horrible? And so as the song progresses, I want you to look at what Led Zeppelin do, their faces, and how everything changes. So let's somebody's song? Do we do it in a way that's going to actually let the song creators actually applaud us and say, so good, well done? So we're stuck, yeah? We're stuck in what we used to do, and what we need to do. There's a scripture in 2 Samuel 15 to 17, because we all know the story of David and Goliath. David goes out, grabs a couple of stones from the river, and slays the big giant. You know, we know that story. We teach it in Sunday schools all the time, but we don't often hear about the other giants. We hear about this giant, Goliath, and this giant we defeated, or David defeated, and we take on his mantle of what he did. And for what he did, he was known for a long, long time. But did you know there were other giants? It was a bad time to be a giant in those days. There were giants with 6 fingers and 6 toes everywhere and all that sort of stuff. And everybody seemed to want to kill him, and they were angry. Maybe it's because everybody wanted to kill him all the time. And so there was this battle that David was in, right? And it says he grew tired. And he said, this giant was going to kill David, right? But hang on, this is David, the giant slayer. He doesn't die. He kills the giants. This giant had a 3-kilo bronze spear tip. He was a big boy. And it says he was going to end David. And David was going to die, right? Well, that's a different story. That's not David, the giant killer. That's David, I've done something dumb. That's David, I've done what I thought I always did. That was what God told me to do, I did. And now I'm going to die. That's not how it's supposed to go, is it? Isn't God supposed to be faithful with the things he told us to do? And when God tells us to do something and we do it and it works out well, that is because we've been part of listening to the voice of God. It's called revelation, right? And when we have a revelation about what God wants to do at that time and we do it and God shows up and it's a faithful thing, what we often do is we build an empire around it. We build structures around it. We turn it into an institution, not the revelation. And when we start to worship the institution rather than the revelation, we end up fighting the wrong giants. So David's mighty men had to jump in and save David. Lest, it says, the light of Israel be snuffed out. And so they never let David, the mighty warrior, fight again, because he tried to do what he did rather than do what God wanted him to do now. The point is, we always need to listen to what God is doing now without throwing away what God has done already, because God is always on the move. The Spirit of God is always on the move doing a new thing. There's a new thing I am doing. And so what does it take to be a community that listens? Respecting the old, respecting what God has done, because it has a voice. We are who we are today because of where we have been. It points to where we're possibly going tomorrow. And also permission giving, so that the others who are here now with young freshness and ideas, listening to the voice of the Spirit of God now, can actually step up to the place together. That's going to take a couple of things. Obviously, listening to each other. What did God do? Why did he do that? Where have we come from? And where are we going? Where is God? What is he saying to you? You know, the theme of wonder this year didn't come from an idea that we had, or what's a clever word that we could come up with. You know what we did? I invited people into the room. We spent a day in the room, and we put 15 years of posters around the room, and we looked at how faithful God has been, where God has taken us to. And then we talked about, what is God saying to you now about your own life? And we just went around the room and we just listened to what the Spirit of God was doing in the lives of the people, rather than what's a clever theme that we can come up with. And it all came around to, wow, it's just like wonderful. Our wonder, the awe of God. But it takes listening, respect. It takes faith, which is risk. And in the moment of now, we don't want to risk in what could be. Our community of faith, we've got a saying, we knit our parachute on the way down because we cannot actually plan everything. Otherwise, you know the faith that we have? We often are people of faith of the hindsight, which means that, isn't it great what God has done? That's amazing what God has done. Hallelujah. That's great what God has done. But my goodness, what a different kind of faith it is to step into the unknown of that faith, the Abraham kind of faith. I'll tell you when you get there. I'll let you know on the way. That's terrifying. Remember what we were, what we are now? We don't want to go into the future because it's too scary. So we solidify these positions. Think about it. In the desert in Israel, when God was leading the people of Israel, they came out of bondage and slavery, but everything that got hard, let us go back. Go back. At least we knew what we could do here, even if it was bad. And so they would settle rather than step into the unknown. To step into the unknown, we need trust. We need revelation. We need understanding of where we've been and where we might be going, where God's drawing us to. So if you take anything home, you might have seen a good music clip. But I trust that you guys, as you encounter change as a community in the future, that you would be brave, that you would be respectful, that you would be listening, that you would be seeking the Lord. And I wish you well in that. Yeah? Amen.